the all the deception, all of the tricks for many years. And it kind of destroyed my family as well, because this becomes a family disease essentially. And I did not know how to get through that. I actually really desperately wanted to get better, and I didn't understand how I was failing so bad. And that's because I didn't understand the eating disorder, so the education was lacking. I also, was trying to control control my recovery with the same things that made me have, anorexia. So anyway, in college, I had a really good experience as a student, and I kind of like regained my weight and, loved what that gave me again, like social life, feeling normal again. But again, I didn't have that education. I just thought it was about gaining weight and then kind of satisfying everybody's, like once I gained weight, people got off my back, but I didn't understand that I had root issues that caused the eating disorder in the first place: perfection, control, shame, anxiety. And I covered it all up with success, and once I looked more normal, like people kind of left me alone and my suffering continued. I didn't continue with the anorexic behavior, but I found alcohol. So for me, I, have addiction and eating disorder history. And so with the alcohol, it was the exact same underlying issues as the eating disorder. So when I became sober almost 13 years ago, I finally looked at the root cause, because it was at a bottom. And once I saw the root cause, I saw all the parallels between the addiction and eating disorder. And so I kind of just cleaned it all up in one fell swoop. And the life that I have today is unbelievable. And I've been able to repair the relationships with my family members. I have chills. I almost teary-eyed even now. And I live with integrity, and I never thought that would be possible. I just carried all that shame, and I just was able to release all of that and work through things and live a life that's fulfilling. And I just, because of the experiences I went through and the challenges, and then overcoming those challenges, it's become my life's purpose to help others and help family members have that hope and be able to really, really have long-lasting healing. So that's a little bit about me.
So I hope, here's some hope. Just hearing some of Ashley's story will be like an indication that recovery is possible, because I do know some people on this call today are like, whoa, like, you know, my loved one is struggling, they're struggling a lot, or they're struggling again. Like, are they ever going to get out of this? Like, is full recovery possible? And I think, Ashley, the message I'm really hearing is yes, it is possible. And I do hear, and I think this is really important, and this really is one of my commitments in FAB, is it is more than just gaining the weight, right? For some people who struggle in that way. And you also do have to gain the weight. Like it is a both, right? It can't be, okay, you gain the weight and that's it, because you're putting yourself at risk. And that's what I hear a little bit like with the alcohol piece in your story. Um, and you can't just do all the work in your head, right? It's like you do have to work on the food part. So I am wondering, so maybe we'll start here, because there are some people on the call today. It's like, and how do I support my loved one eating? Right? Like, and I'm sure you can relate to that when you were at that point in your recovery of like, maybe I know we've talked about your mom, like your mom was really trying to get you to eat. And I'm wondering what started helping you shift, even though that wasn't the whole story, right? Like it wasn't enough just to gain the weight and have everybody off your back. but like what did start clicking to have you start eating yourself and feeding yourself more consistently? And was there something your loved ones were helping you with that did make a difference?
Oh, that kind of comes in stages, you know. I think ultimately, um, what changed for me was that I had to make the decision.
Mm,
And there was nothing anybody could do until I made the decision.
mm,
And you know, I'm sure that's not easy to hear because when we care for a people, you know, just do it. Don't you want it? Don't you see it? And most likely they do. Most likely they really, really want to get better. I know I did. I would
mm,
be fine. But I just, what I had to do was basically separate what everybody's expectations were and realize that I had to do this for me.
mm,
And once I was able to establish that um, ownership of my behavior, regardless of what others thought and said and expected, that's when the real change happened.
mm. Okay,
And
I'm gonna
with
ask you
that, I
another.
will
Go
say,
ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add that once I made that decision, no one would stop me.
Oh, yeah,
Like
you got,
my recovery was happening.
yeah. So here may be the $1,000,000 question. What ended up clicking for you? Because you mentioned in the beginning, it's like you literally could have died from your eating disorder. That's how fierce your eating disorder was and how serious things were. Were there things that started helping you shift that? And I would also ask our families to think about that too,
Hmm.
because some of you are like, whoa, like I really see my loved one has now chosen recovery for themselves. Like they are doing it. And what were those things that sort of all came together to have them go, okay, it may be hard, but I want this and I'm doing this and I'm walking the path. So I don't know, Ashley, if you have any, like anything that started to have it shift for you so you could own it.
There were a few things. I think ultimately it was an acknowledgement that I couldn't do it alone anymore. And that my way wasn't working
Mm,
and that wasn't a bad thing. It was just an acceptance of that. And once
mm,
I humbled myself to accept that I couldn't do it alone and that I was willing to do whatever it took, that was the baseline. The next thing that happened when things really, really started to heal was my family all you know, started to educate themselves about what was going on for me. And I watched them, you know, like because they also saw that I was at bottom. And then, you know, they took it upon themselves to basically be in their own family program.
mm,
And that was like a miracle for me for a few
mm,
reasons. One, because I saw the like I just the moment they said they were doing it, they hadn't even started. The moment they said they were doing it, I felt supported in a way that just shifted things for me. Like, oh my gosh, now they can maybe understand what it's like for me. And it's not a moral issue. It's not like you know, like there's something wrong with me issue. It's like I felt really supported. And then
mm,
secondly, then once they learned what I was going through and the best ways to support me, and they started doing that, like I felt like I had this space that I really needed to continue. And so, for instance, when I would say, I need to do this for my recovery, where before the program they might have criticized it or said, no, you have family obligations, like, or whatever it was. This time they understood that I had to put recovery first and they supported it. So
mm,
you know, these things they didn't quite understand before, as much as they were trying to. They always loved me, always supported me. Now i i I just felt supported in the ways that I needed, and then they started doing that. And it wasn't always perfect, but I always knew, like, it just helped ease the heaviness of my recovery. Um,
Wow,
yeah,
that was really great. So I'm hearing you had to choose, and the choosing for you was this isn't working anymore. And it's definitely not working, me trying to do this by myself. And the other part I'm hearing is having your family starting to learn more, and you weren't having to handle that part of educating them. Like they
yeah,
were taking on their own family work, and then they really could get it more for you and listen to you and understand you had to put your recovery first. So, I would love to just maybe take a pause because we do want, as much as this will be a dialogue, I would really like one thing Ashley and I said we're committed to is we want to give space for any of you to ask questions or like to talk about where you're struggling because I am seeing, I thank you for writing in the chat because we're seeing some themes going on, right? But like what maybe questions people have, or even just like what you're struggling with, or even a family that maybe sees, whoa, like something has shifted with my loved one. And like, wow, they are kind of things are starting to click for them. Um, I will call on people, but but I kind of really want to hear like if somebody wants to share something. Who would like to say something? Because I can't call on you. I do want to kind of call on someone. I actually want to call on Marnie. Marnie, I'm putting you on the spot. And there's a reason I'm putting you on the spot, and I think you know why I'm putting you on the spot. Um, One, because I think your daughter just fairly recently started shifting some, like she has been shifting. She's been shifting, and it's been these like tiny little shifts. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, something like I get goosebumps and maybe tears. Like something really significantly has changed with her. And like we're seeing it before our very eyes. And it is like so inspiring, really. Um, so, Marnie, I'm wondering if you could just share a little bit because it may help some of the other families who, are having maybe a harder time or are newer to this process again. And you're on mute, Marnie.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Sophia has done a huge shift. I mean, Ryan and I were reflecting yesterday on everything, and we were thinking back even 4 months ago, um, where where she's at now. And I think she's kind of using these little motivators to really help her. Like she was asked to be in her cousin's wedding. Um, and I think something really clicked in her because, a couple of months ago, she wasn't going to be able to be in the wedding with looking the way that she did. And I think something clicked in her, and it was as if she realized, at least to me, I think back on it, it's like she realized all the things that this eating disorder was taking from her. It's taken her dance, it took school from her. It was going to take this opportunity to be a part of this wedding from her. And I think she kind of just had this shift where she was like, wow, I don't want this to take all of this amazing life experiences from me anymore. And there's still little hiccups along the way, but I mean, I look at her now and I'm just like, wow, as Ryan and I were saying yesterday, it's like, yeah, 6 months ago, we were still in this kind of spot where we were feeling like, oh my gosh, are we ever going to get out of this? And she's really, as the saying goes, taken the bull by the horns. And, she's involved a little bit more slowly, getting back into her dance. And I think that's been great for her to realize what all she's been missing on that side of things. Her friends, there's competition next year. She really wants to get back into that. And I think she's realized that the only way to do that is to eat and get her body. I have tears. Get her body back to where it needs to be to sustain all of, life's amazing things that it has to offer for us. And especially her, she's 16, you know, and I think she was realizing that her eating disorder just had such a hold on her. And have to really think of this wedding as being like it was just like this motivator for her. And she was determined to be in this wedding. And she did, you know, and she looked beautiful. And we had so many people tell us, like, oh my gosh, because people had known, you know, a little bit of what we had been going through. And they were like, wow, she's come so far. And
Mm.
it's just been amazing to watch it and to see that light come back in her eyes. So yeah, I hope I, sorry, I got a little choked up there.
Well, it just shows how moving it is and how like you weren't even sure, right? Like a half a year ago, like was she going to get to this point? And something really has shifted. She really is committed. I mean, she shows up for she just she shows up, you know, she really shows up for her recovery. And one thing I'm hearing, so this is helpful, is I'm hearing that she had to get in touch with the losses of the eating disorder, like what this was taking away. And then these like motivators, but these motivators that were in her reach, right? And
Right,
sometimes it's hard when somebody's 16 to be like, this might affect your health. Yes, like sometimes that's scary for young, you know, even 20 somethings or 30 somethings, but it was almost like she needed something that was more tangible. Like that wedding thing for her, it was just like a real goal. Like a real goal of like this is my reward or something. Like if I really kind of keep pushing myself. So I guess I'm wondering if any of that might be helpful for other families to hear too. Like the losses of the eating disorder, what, you know, what's possible on the other side. And Marnie, maybe the other thing I'll say, ask you is like, and what do you think you did? Because obviously you and Ryan have been super, super involved, you know. Um, what do you think were the things as mom or thinking about Ryan? Like, what kinds of things did you do or you didn't do to really support Sophia?
I mean, I think the most important thing was just showing up for her every day and just letting her know that, you know, we had her back, and coming to the support, you know, these support groups, and just reaching out to Jen, things were, you know, going kind of quiet, just how do we help her, and her just knowing that we were there. And then, but then also sometimes I think not being too overbearing, you know,
Mm,
trying to, as much as I wanted to be like, have you eaten your snack? Have you done this? Have you done that? Just kind of being there and letting her know that we were there, but not being so overbearing, which is, it's tough because you're like treading on, what's that saying? You're walking on thin ice, you know, because you don't want them to think that you're not there, but then you want to be there. And so it's, but I think the most important thing was just letting her know that we were there and that she could come to us, and for her learning to use her voice, like, hey, mom, I do need help with this snack, or I do need help with dinner. And exercise was a, you know, a tricky part with Sophia too. So it was kind of learning that balance of, you know, gosh, I want to go and exercise, and coming to us and us being for her.
yeah. I love what you're saying. It is like you're kind of walking this tightrope in some ways. Like you're trying to not overdo it. You're not underdo, you know, it's like what's that sort of right place to stand that they know you're there for them. You're not trying to control it, right? And I will say, I'll just say something sort of funny, but I realized, Marnie, I hadn't talked to you for a while. Like, right, Marnie and I, like, she's in a different country. I don't even know if you guys know that, but like, we were on WhatsApp a lot, leaving
Yeah.
like long message, like leaving messages back and forth. And I do say this to, and some people are newer today, but I always say, we want to hear from you guys as the families, because just like I was saying with Ashley, it's like nobody heals from these eating disorders typically by themselves. It is a village. And you, all of you, are the most important part of this village. And so like, you know, partnering together, it makes such a difference. So it's like we need you and we know you guys need us. And so like never hesitate to reach out. And I think many of the people on this call today, you do, right? You do reach out when something, but you know, sometimes like we hold back and I'm like more communication the better. So I do want to say that.
Yeah.
Um
Can I
yeah, go
ask
ahead,
you?
Ashley.
So
Or
like the other thing is that, you know, when you reach out, it's judgment free. Like I know that like for me, I've heard it all. Like nothing phases me. Like there's nothing too scary to share or ask. Just wanted to get that out. And then I wanted to respond to Marnie. Like I wanted to reinforce what she was saying. Like I know that in my own experience, what helped, like if I had to say the thing that helped the most with my family was that unconditional support, knowing it was there. And also knowing that my responsibility was knowing I'm human and like it is a little, you know, progress, a little step, progress, step back. Knowing that they wouldn't abandon me if I made a mistake or, you know, like just knowing that it was that they were there for me no matter what without the judgment. Um, and also it is a fine line between being like when they also started to educate themselves, they stopped being so overbearing. You know, it is a fine line. You don't want to enable either. So it is a fine line, but when they kind of stepped back and like took care of themselves as well, and then also let me know that they were unconditionally there every day, that was absolutely critical for
Mm,
to support me. And I will say, I wanted to add, you know, what made it, you know, for me, when things started to shift was also the losses. And it wasn't like, oh, I need better health, like all the obvious ones. It was really like, I want to wear a swimsuit again. I love swimming. I want to be like, I want to have energy to play cello. It was so devastating to lose everything that I lost. And it may be something that you think is inconsequential, but will mean everything for them. So um, yeah, I just wanted to add those things.
mm. There's also a theme that I'm seeing with the chat in the beginning of this idea of isolation, um, this idea of sometimes like the dependency. And I think when somebody is sometimes really right with the eating disorder, isolation is really a part of it. Right? So how do I start knowing somebody is doing better is that they are turning their attention more towards the world, right? Like they are starting to make these connections in a different way, but there is so much inward and the isolating piece. And actually, I know these are like big themes, but like if you would maybe share with our families today something because it's not easy, right? When you're seeing that, like, oh my gosh, like they're making these choices, or maybe somebody is inviting them out and they're saying no, and like, and again, wanting to give them space to make their choice, but at the same time, seeing that they're keeping their lives like so small but just like shoving them out of the nest, like that doesn't work either. So, I guess anything you can speak to this idea of like the isolation, the social part, connections when you start kind of getting healthier in terms of the eating disorder.
Yeah, I mean, as far as family members, you know, I think, I mean, it is a broad topic, and I know that isolation is a number one like behavior. I know that for me, I was tested very early on, like within a month of like real recovery. Um, I remember I got triggered, and my first instinct was to isolate very, very powerfully. And what I had been learning, as I know FAB teaching, is that isolation is a coping mechanism, like an unhealthy coping mechanism. You know, time alone is very different than isolation. It's a different energy. So, man, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I feel like people in this program you know, maybe even encouraging and not do this, but like maybe gently encouraging rather, you know, so that they don't feel they have to come to you and like, you know, go that route, you know, encouraging maybe to join the groups on the weekends.
Mm.
Because that was that was where I started to stop isolating, was connecting with other people that were struggling with what I struggled with. And that was my starting point. And just, you know, gently, hey, have you thought about reaching out, you know, joining that group, you know, and talking to other people that might be struggling with the same thing that you are. And, you know, and then, you know, that you let them know that you're there for them. But also I feel like that makes them feel like they have a safe space that they can go to that's not necessarily you, especially if they're not ready to share certain things or whatever. I don't know. I feel like connecting to other people with the same struggles is the best way. And that's what I did when I first learned, in that moment when I got really triggered and I wanted to isolate again. Instead I pushed through. I understood that that was my trigger and I reached out to somebody, and that set the tone for my recovery, was to realize that power of reaching out. And the same goes to you too, as family members, when like you struggle with your own struggles around this, reaching out to other family members, just knowing you're not alone is
Mm.
really, really important.
I think some of you know we did a group last Sunday, and we did a group at a restaurant here called Seasons 52. So we had the whole FAB team, and then it was in Miami, so it was a haul for some people. But I have to tell you, there was something so amazing having all of us that could be there in person and connecting in that way. And the progress some of your loved ones could really see in themselves, like where they were last year when we did the Seasons 52 meal, and where they are now. Ryan being one, Ella being one, they were like really amazed with themselves. They're like, whoa, like I can do this now, right? Like I'm now one of the role models here, right? So this idea of like connecting to like-minded community. And one of our people who sort of has been shying away from groups, kind of what you were saying, actually, she showed up, and by the end, she said her takeaway was, I really need to show up for group, right? It's like she's doing pretty well in her recovery, so she's like, do I need that? But like, who doesn't need community and support? Like we like we all benefit from that, right? So there is something about being with other people who really, really get it. So I just wanted to add that in, and hopefully we're going to do another one further up north. Last year I did a mindful meal with Dr. Narducci and myself, and we did it in the like Tampa area. So we'll do another one up north for some of our people that are up that way as well. So, what other questions, other thoughts where your loved one's struggling, like um, anything else anybody wants to ask? And like, there's no wrong answers here. And feel free to just shout it out. Alyssa, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, so
Okay.
one thing I think Marnie was saying, it was, and also Ashley, the losses piling up, what you're missing out on created a shift. So then that like made me think, well, really where Ella's current life situation is, being in medical school, she's just inundated with an extreme amount of workload. So in a way that mimics like the same losses again. So there's not enough time to go out and be with friends. There's not enough time to do things she enjoys. So I think that also contributes to isolation. I just think she's lonely. And she was saying like, she's suffering a little with her self-esteem lately. She'll talk to people and then like leave and question like, why did I say that? So I think a problem with her next I don't know, foreseeable future in this field is it's just such a work heavy load, and then that lifestyle is typically unbalanced. So I don't know if that will hurt her recovery because there's less time. It's her first time not living with roommates.
Mm-hmm.
She's alone. Most of the kids live in Brickell, so that's farther away. She's learning better being on Zoom versus always going to class. So is that the eating disorder, or is that her needing like to be more efficient with her time? So it didn't occur to me till they both said that. And I'm like, this is a challenging potential issue for her.
Yeah. I think one thing I'll just say, Alyssa, it's like any big transitions, I know we've talked about this, but even good transitions, right? Like she got into medical school, she got into the medical school of her choice, like amazing thing, but it is a huge transition, right? Even as good of a student as Ella is, it's like she wasn't even pre-med, right?
Right.
That's one of the things that she shares. And I will say there was I think it was like a week or so ago, and she was really having a hard time at class.
Right.
And she reached out and she made the decision, like, I'm leaving class. We ended up doing like a little mini session, and then she made a plan for herself for the day. So I think one thing is for her to recognize, sort of like I think Ashley, you said this, like when is alone time like self-care? And when is like she's saying no to a social thing, or not going to class because it's more isolative. And I think it's starting to distinguish those two things. Like she made a very specific effort to be at the season's 52. I'm sure she had a ton of stuff to study that day.
No, that was super helpful because she said last year she dreaded it. This year she was looking forward to it. And then I think Ryan drove her home and that was enjoyable. And so, it's like I don't know if she's doing the group or not, but that would be a good thing for her, and
Exactly.
social activities with other people going through it is really helpful for her.
Yeah. So Dr. Vaughn and I sometimes, for those of you who don't know this, sometimes we'll do meetings together with some of the team. So we met with Ella like maybe 2 weeks ago, and she did make the commitment to get back to her community. So like Ryan, Ella, they're in the next level of the program called Mastery. And that Mastery group, they are really connected with one another, right? Because they've gone through this first phase. And now this is a little more, I don't want to say advanced recovery, but it's kind of these like, how do you do recovery in life, right? How do you start making these good choices for yourself, right? How do you start doing these adulting behaviors? Molly's also in Mastery and dealing with some, things you can't even like, right? Like hurricanes like damaging your house, and like, where's the playbook for how you deal with that, right? Um, so I do think, we said to Ella very clearly, like, make that a priority, your group, because that's your time.
Yeah.
You're not talking to other med students about your recovery, I don't think. That's
No,
what Ella's MO.
no.
Like she has her people and that's who she shares with. So having that group of 5 of them right now is so critical.
Mhm.
So maybe you could ask, I mean, I'll ask her, but too,
I'll
but like you
fix
could be
that.
like, hey, how's Mastery going? How are your people? How's your tribe? Just to see what she says. That is helpful, just like a little nut, like a little planting of a seed, because I know she likes it now. Like I know she likes the group now. And in the beginning, it wasn't her jam.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That's what I got when she left. She really liked the people. She really enjoyed it. So I'll start
Yeah.
just asking sometimes about that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I will say we had a lot of fun together. I mean, we actually made it really fun, and that's what one of the girls said. She was like, I was like, well, how was it? And she was like, well, it was a lot better than I expected, because she was also used to the being in a treatment center where they would go to a restaurant and practice, and that's not how we do these. So there's like a fun social part. It is therapeutic, but it's really about connection. So
Yeah, can I just add a couple of things?
yeah, please.
So, for me, I learned early on, somebody taught me that whatever I put in front of recovery, I'll lose. And
Mm,
meaning that my
mm,
recovery, even now, probably even more than when I started, my recovery and well-being is always number one, always.
mm,
And, at the time, in early recovery, I was doing 250 concerts a year. And I thought, I don't have time for this, blah, blah, blah. And then somebody in my community reminded me, you had plenty of time in your eating disorder. So just think
mm,
of all those hours of obsessing that you spent every day. You have 1 hour you can spend maybe connecting with a fellowship group. And that was very interesting to me, because also the disease of the eating disorder will try to convince us, oh, it won't help, it won't do anything. But then every single time I would reach out, I felt better. And so I had to remind myself that every time I did it, I did feel better. So whenever the thought came, oh, you don't have time for that, it's not going to help you, I just remembered every time, 100% of the time, I felt better. And then I wanted to say that, I'm very busy these days. I perform and I'm a coach, but my recovery is still number one. And
mm,
I'm telling you, when I do that, everything else works out. Everything works out.
mm, mm,
So I think what I want you would want you to take from that is that recovery doesn't take away from life. It only makes it better.
mm.
I-
So that's something really important, right? Because at some point, like some people are at a different point. But what I'm hearing you say, it's never like it's handled, right? So you want to really make sure your loved ones are, they're staying connected in some way, right? And I would ask them like how they're, how's it going? How are your sessions going? How are you liking this level of program? Like, how's it going? And if they're like, oh, it's good. Oh, tell me what's good about it. Like, have them talk to you about it. That I think is really important. I also wanted to see, Nadine, Sean, anything you guys want to say? Because I saw a question and, you guys had reached out to me not so long ago. Like, can we just talk out a few things, which was super helpful?
Yeah, I was getting, first of all, Ashley, thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. But I did have a question because, obviously you go through road, bumps in the road, and I just want to find out a little bit more about your recovery and how are you right now today in your recovery? I mean, I'd like to know sort of how would it look for Ryan, our son, in 5 years' time, 10 years' time? Can you perhaps give us a little bit of a flavor of what recovery looks like for you today?
Wow. I almost don't even, well, I do think of it as recovery because it's I'm very consciously about that, but it's not a burden. I don't struggle. For me, if you say struggles, they're much, they're normal life struggles. But now it's about how do I meet those struggles? What's my relationship to those struggles? And now, for me, most of the time, my response is second nature, a healthy response. I don't isolate. I'm very mindful of where I'm at, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I'm just very in tune with little shifts, and I just, checking in with myself is second nature. I just, the way that I meet life is very balanced and healthy. But I'm also very aware. I don't ever underestimate the power of the disease. But that doesn't mean it's like this big monster or like something to be afraid of. I'm just like, okay, I know that at any moment this could come back and try to take me out. Meaning that's how I don't underestimate the disease.
Right.
But I live very healthily today. I really love my life, and I love how I show up in life, and I have all the tools and support to help me. And whatever does come my way, I mean, it's not about food or eating anymore. Like it's really just living life. I don't struggle with, you know, drinking or eating or anything like that. It's really just my overall like mental health, spiritual health. And today I have a lot of activities that I do throughout the day that support my well-being, and that's my priority. And then everything else is an overflow.
Thank you.
So
That's very helpful.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, guys. I'm also wondering, Susan and Bill, you guys had a great question because I know things have changed a little for Molly, given what's happened with these hurricanes in your area. And she's also in mastery. I don't know if there's anything you want to say, but I know like the dynamics changed a little because she's in the house, right?
Right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, right now. Okay, got it. Got it. Okay. Yeah, no problem. I don't know if there's anything you want to say, and it's okay if there's nothing that you feel like you want to say there right now.
you could write it in the chat too, if
We're good. This has been very helpful. Thank you so much for sharing with us. It's really, you know, enlightening, and nobody's in this alone, that's for sure.
Yeah, look, and it takes something sometimes to reach out for support, right? That's not always the easiest thing. Like, you know, we know that oftentimes this perfectionism can be a part of this. So then to reach out, whether it's your team or your family, and be like, I am struggling, right? So one, it's like you have to share, oh, something's wrong. The other thing I definitely think can be a theme, and Ashley, maybe this could be helpful for our families, is like I've heard your loved ones sometimes say, I don't want to burden them. Like I don't want them to be stressed if I'm struggling. I don't want them to worry about me. They already have enough going on. Right? I don't like, or oh great, I'm already having a hard time, and if they can't handle what I'm giving them, then it's like I'm dealing with my struggle and now I'm dealing with their feelings. So sometimes I've heard, and not just your loved ones, this is, you know, kind of a theme, but like why your loved ones might not reach out and be like, I'm having a hard time, and they want to sort of pretend like they have it together. And usually everybody knows, though. Usually it's like pink elephant. We all know what's kind of going on. Maybe we don't know the degree it's going on, but usually, you know, I think this group is a pretty aware group of what's really going on. So I don't know what you would say about that, Ashley, like for the families, and if you can even relate to that at certain points in your own recovery, like you did need your family, but you were sometimes holding back for all these reasons.
yeah, well, first of all, having the community of people that had similar struggles was the place that I could go to talk all of this out. And so, you know, just knowing I had that was helpful. I already lost my train of thought. Can you remind me of the question?
Well, just this, I know I said a lot in there, but sometimes somebody with an eating disorder might not share because they are mostly, I mean, I'm painting with broad strokes, but sensitive souls. And it's like, I don't want to burden you. I
Yeah,
don't want to stress you out. What about if you can't handle my struggle? So I'd rather not say anything, and I'll just, again, struggle in isolation because I don't want to upset you, or maybe you can't handle it.
yeah. So for me, what it was, again, a process, and it was something that I just stayed in each day and didn't try to think of the future. I had to be really mindful about what I could and couldn't control. And so as far as my family, I had to remind myself, and now I don't have to anymore, but very, you know, in early recovery, I really had to focus on just me and what was my responsibility and what I could take ownership of, which was my recovery, how I show up, how I, don't isolate, being aware of my triggers and what I'm doing about those triggers or not doing. I really think that I had to let go of feeling like a burden, and I had to just focus on me. And, I will say, working with family members, that it can look like the person in recovery doesn't care about you and is being selfish, that it can look like that. And for me, sometimes it was a trial and error of boundaries. But ultimately, I had to take that ownership. And then eventually, as I got good at that, then I started connecting more with my family. And then, that was a process. And I think we just have to be patient with that process, whether it's the loved one or the family members, and that we're all in this together, and to just know that you're there for them. They're learning their independence. They're learning where their boundaries are. They're learning what works and what doesn't. But as long as they're committed to their recovery, I think just supporting them in that and let them knowing you're there is helpful. And then as far as like the burden thing, that's something that's theirs, and they're gonna have to work through that. Like
Thank you so
I
much.
did.
Like you did. Any other questions? I know we have just a few more minutes, but any other thoughts, questions at this moment?
Sorry, can I say something quickly?
Yes, please, Nadine.
Please. Hi, thanks again for everything, Ashley. You know the saying that parents say, you're as happy as your unhappiest child. As a parent, if your children are unhappy, you're unhappy, And it was a saying that I use quite regularly because we've had issues with our son for quite a while. And when he's unhappy, I'm unhappy. And, and now one day, Ryan turned around and he said to me, Mom, do you know how much pressure you put on me by saying that? I said, what do you mean? He says, well, my happiness is now trying to make you happy. And I didn't realize that. And that's when a shift happened in me, where I didn't show him, and my attitude towards his issues and being there for him had totally 180 degreed, where I was not thinking about, well, woe is me because my son is so sad. It had changed totally, and I didn't realize the impact that had on our loved ones who were trying to heal. And again, Ashley, as you said, you didn't want to hurt your loved ones by being in the shift. You know what I'm trying to say? Anyway, I just thought that was quite
That's excellent, Nadine.
It's
I mean,
huge.
so good, because it's like, when you're a parent, you want the best for your kid, and you do suffer when they're suffering. And so great that Ryan could actually use his voice and say that to you, right? That shows sort of like where he's also calm, that he could be like, hey, Mom, that's like so much pressure on me.
Yeah.
Right. So there is something where it's like, and kind of going back to what Marnie was saying, it's like being there, that unconditional love. But at the same time, it's like, I think it is helpful for them to also know that you kind of have your own lives, you have your own tools, like you will be able to handle it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's having that unconditional faith. It's just being there for your kid and not trying to help, just be there. Come sit in my mess. Yeah,
that's right. That was one of Ryan's. Can you just sit with me in my mess? Like, you don't have to do anything, you don't have to fix it, just be with me in my mess. Yeah, that was a great, I remember when he said that.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I think we are going to complete for today. So I just again want to thank all of you for being here. I would highly recommend keep coming back. Like, I would put this in your calendar. We meet usually it's the first Saturday of every month. This one we moved. Wait, did we move this one? Yeah.
Yes.
But we'll be back again that first Saturday in December. everybody should be getting a text message, and kind of even knew Ashley was here. If you're not receiving those text messages with the link, then just let me know. You can text me and let me know, hey, I'm not on, the call loop that sends that out. And again, I always say this, but please, if there's anything we can do to support your loved one or any concerns you have, err on the side of reaching out. That's why we're here. And it can really be weekends, it can be early morning, it can be anytime, like really. And we will get back to you. I will get back to you. So Ashley, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. And yeah, we'll see everybody that first weekend in December.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Super helpful.